Hello and welcome to my first video. Any suggestions are welcome in the comments section below. This will be a basic PC build guide, and because this is a basic PC build guide, I'm not going to focus too much on what I actually have in front of me. I'm just going to focus on how to put it together. This is for beginners. Parts you're going to need to build your computer are a case, some hard drives, processor, motherboard, RAM, video card, power supply, and fans. The tools and supplies you're going to be needing for this today are a Phillips head screwdriver, clippers, thermal paste, and zip ties. A few extra things that you might want to have. Bluetooth adapter if your motherboard doesn't have Bluetooth. I chose to have a cooler for my RAM for no reason. A fan controller so that I can control all my fans through hardware instead of having my computer decide when my fan should go on. And because I'm lazy, a power button that I can use from anywhere as long as I have sight. The first step you're going to want to do, obviously, is open the case. There's going to be screws in the back. If you're lucky, there'll be thumb screws. Just unscrew them, put them aside for later. Put this aside. If you have a window, try not to break it. The first actual step to building a computer is to remember to put your I/O shield in the back of the case. If you forget to put this in and want to put it in later, you're going to have to take the entire thing apart. Don't do that. Make sure that you have the orientation correct. Just pop it in, and that's it. If your case does not come with these already built in, put them in. They'll be in a little package. They're just screws that you screw into the case so that you can screw your motherboard into it. Whenever you're touching any of your PC components, make sure to either touch your case or your power supply so that you can discharge any electricity built up in your body. The next step is to put the motherboard on top of those screws that you put in earlier. The next step is to screw your motherboard into the case. These screws should have came with your case. There will be 8 to 10 spots on the motherboard to screw in. Now that you have your motherboard screwed in, the next step is to insert the processor. If you have a AMD processor, there's this little latch. You lift it, you find the triangle, and you match it with the triangle on the case. It's kind of hard to see, but it's right there. You also have the option of looking for these divots. They're also going to be on the processor. Don't touch any of that. You'll kill it. It should just fall right in, and then you latch it down. That's it. It's on. The next thing I would recommend is finding out where you're going to put your hard drives. On this computer, they go in the back. Just take off the thumb screws again. Put them aside for later. If your hard drives have a hard drive cage, put them in the cage. In this case, they just slide into the back. For the smaller hard drive, just latch this onto here. If I'm not blind, I'll find it eventually. There we go. The next step is finding out where you want to put your fans and in what direction. I'm putting mine here, 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 and here. These fans will be pulling air in, this will be pushing air out, and these will also be pushing air out. On this case, there's actually a grill that I can remove. To take it out, there's a screw here, here, and 3 in the back. Here, here, and here. And just slides out. To attach your fans, you're going to need 4 screws that came with the fan or the case. They're going to be thicker, and they're going to be sharp. somewhere on the case there will either be holes or slots to screw them in. If your fans are brand new, they will not be threaded. These screws will thread them. You may hear some cracking. That's normal. On my computer, you have to pull off the front panel to get to where you put the rest of the fans. Now that you have all your fans attached to the case, you're going to want to slide this back in. If you have anything that you want to put in a 3.5 inch drive bay, like a DVD drive, now would be the time to do it. I'm going to be using a NZXT fan controller. Next, you're going to want to find all your front I/O and your power buttons. Fish them through the holes in your case so that you can plug them in the front. Now that you fish your cables through the gap and into the front of the case, you're going to want to consult your motherboard manual to find out which headers are for which cables. Plugging these in is extremely easy. You just find the right orientation and which header they go into, and you make sure the cat doesn't destroy your computer. Let me go right in. Next, you're going to want to plug in, if you have it, your USB 3.0 jumper. It's a keyed cable, so it should only fit one way. Last of your front I/O is going to be your audio cable. If you need it, it's going to say audio, and it should say JAUD1 on most motherboards. It could be different though. It's also keyed, so it will only fit one way. If it doesn't slide in easy, flip it and it should slide in easy. The next piece you'll be adding is the power supply. If you have a modular power supply, you'll have to choose which cables you want to plug in. Power supply itself usually can either go in through the front or the back of the case. On my case, it only goes in through the back because it has a basement shroud. Just slides in. And in the back, you would just screw into the holes that line up with the power supply. The next step is to apply thermal paste to your processor. Generally a pea-sized amount will work. You don't have to put too much, but if you don't put enough, that could be a problem. That's good. That might be a little much, but that's fine. It's better than not enough. After applying your thermal paste, you're going to want to plug in your CPU cooler. It has an arm on mine on one side and then just a hook on the other. Put the hook over the latch on the bottom and then try to get the arm to go over the latch on the top. Once you have both sides on, just tighten whichever latch you have, and that's it. Next, don't forget to plug in your fan header. The fan otherwise won't do anything. Next step is to plug in your amp. There is a notch at some point down the bar. Make sure that you plug that in with the notch at the same spot. If you only have 2 sticks of RAM, check your motherboard's manual to see which slots are the best slots to plug this into. Since I have 4 sticks, I'm using all of them. There's going to be a notch either at the top, the bottom, or both. Just slide it in. You're going to hear a click, and that's how you know it's in. The next step is to plug in your cards. First thing I'm plugging in is a card for my power cable, power button. I didn't show you guys plugging that in because it was more than basic. And it's just, for this half, it's literally just a cable. One way or another. There we go. on your case. You're going to want to line up, find out which slot you're going to take off a thumb screw if it's on there. If not, just snap off the cover. Put the thumb screw aside, don't lose it. Line the card up. And it'll only fit one way. And just screw your thumb screw back on. The next part is most people's favorite part, the video card. Similar process as the other card. Instead of taking up one slot though, it usually will take 2, sometimes 3. Take off the thumb screws. And then remove the covers. Put the thumb screws aside because you're going to need them in a second. Line it up. Make sure you're dropping it onto the slot. And push it in. Then all you need is to tighten your thumb screws back on. The next step is to route any of the cables that you don't need in the front of the case anymore through any holes that you can use to the back. Now that you've routed all of your cables from the front to the back, it should look like a mess. That's fine. It's normal. You'll get to that eventually. The next step is to route your 24-pin power connector for your motherboard through the nearest grommet to the front. Same with your PCIe power cables for your video cable. And last, the power cable for your power supply. If yours comes apart into 2 like mine, it'll be easier for some cases. Now that you have your power cables in the front of your case, you want to plug them in to your video card. That's what the PCIe cable's for. They only fit one way, they're keyed, so if they don't go in, don't force it. That means you're plugging them in wrong. Next is your 24-pin power connector for your motherboard. Same situation, it only goes in one way. If it's not going in, flip it over, and then it should go in. One of these cables is going to be the 8-pin power connector for your motherboard. The next step is to plug your fans in to either your motherboard or your fan controller. Since I have a fan controller, it's as simple as matching them up and slotting them in. Again, like most computer cables, they are keyed, they only fit one way. If it doesn't fit, don't force it, flip it, try again. My fan controller comes with a temp probe. What I like to do is keep it as close to my GPU as possible so that it keeps it cold when my GPU is hot, and it slows down my fans when I'm not actually gaming. I literally just stick it anywhere near the heat sink. That's where it's going to be hot. This is completely overkill. You're probably not going to have this, and you're probably not going to see many people who do. It's a fan for my RAM. Generally, most people don't need this, but felt like going overkill. The next step is you're going to want to start wiring up your hard drives. If you only have one, it's pretty easy. It's hard drive cable to the hard drive. Again, it's keyed, only fits one way. If you have more than one hard drive, you might want to label them so that you know which cable or which position your drive goes into your motherboard. That way you won't have problems booting if you have to swap them out for some reason. The cable plugs in to usually on the right side of your motherboard. Again, it's keyed. And that's it for the data cable of your hard drive. The next step is to power your hard drives. It's going to look like this. Long cable with a bunch of different attachments to it. They all have the same thing. It's keyed like all the rest. Slot it, and that's it. The next step is to check if it turns on now that you have everything plugged in. Plug the power cable into the back. Plug the power cable into your nearest outlet. Flip your switch. Usually it'll turn on its own. That's fine. If it doesn't, find your power button and press it. If you hear no codes or beeps, you're good. If your motherboard has a little screen on it and it doesn't have any errors, you're also good. At this point in time, now that you should have everything plugged in and your computer should be working, you don't have to do this, but it's highly recommended that you do some cable management and clean this mess up so that if you ever have to replace something, it's easy to find the cables, disconnect it, and plug it back in. This is where your zip ties come in handy. Find the bunch of cables, you get them to look as neat as possible. You find a grommet or a hole like this. You get a zip tie, and you fish it through, and you tie it on. After doing some cable management, your computer should look something like this. Obviously it won't be exactly the same, as you won't have the same case as me. But just try to get the cables to fit wherever they can to be neat. Now with everything plugged in and put away neatly, it's time to make sure you didn't forget anything. Any screws or any cables that you forgot to plug in, you should try and do that now. Now it's just time to put your panels back on and you're good to go. One last thing I can recommend is to try and find a way to keep this from sagging. Sag can cause issues and even break your motherboard. I scanned my computer and 3D printed a stand. Probably won't have something like that around to do, so try a pencil or something like that. Just break it, get it in there. If you're lucky, it'll be that easy. Now that you have all these cables on the back, it might be a little tight putting this panel back on. Don't be afraid to put a little weight into it and just slide it on. Make sure not to cut any of your cables while you're doing that, or you'll have a bad time. At this point in time, if everything went well, you should have a working PC. All that's left to do is install Windows. That's a completely different video. I won't be doing that here. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. If you wanted to know specifically about why my power cables were red and black and didn't look like plastic, maybe I'll make another video about that one day down the road. It's a completely complicated, long process. You can buy cables like that, but generally it's just from one company and you can learn to make them yourself. It is a completely aesthetic thing. It's not necessary, just think it looks nice. If you have any suggestions on how I could make a better video down the road, leave the comments in the comment section down below. And if you like this video, maybe subscribe. I might make more videos, I might not, depends on how much attention this video gets. Thanks, and I'll see you guys next time.